Welcome everybody, 3:30. So we're just starting, just a few in case you haven't met me before. To some of you, I'm Terry Thorson. I work for Spinal Cord Injury BC and am facilitating this meeting today with Paul Gauthier from the Individualized Funding Resource Center, who's going to be presenting on CSIL today. Just before we start, I want to let everyone know that everybody basically is muted right now. So you should be able to have the opportunity to be able to mute and unmute yourself. But if you can try to keep yourself on mute, that would save a lot of background noise that anybody might have or sort of interrupting people. I can also unmute you as well. So if you have a question, please, either raise your hand or gesture, whatever you can do. There's a chat box, you can type it in there as well. So before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that we are video recording this. If you do not want, and this actual video will get posted on our YouTube channel so that people can see. So if you don't want anyone to see your face, please just turn your video off. And yeah, or, you can always get the link if you definitely don't want to be here for that. And yeah, and then if you have any questions, again, just, either raise your hand. We'll start out by, Paul will probably give his presentation about what CSIL is, who it's for, some history, whatever all the things that he's going to talk about. He's the expert. And also then at the very end, we'll give you an opportunity to be able to ask him any questions. And if you even have some experiences to share yourself, we'd also love to hear them. So with that being said, I'm going to leave it over to Paul to introduce himself. Thanks, Paul.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Terry, and thanks for having me. And I am new to this technology, so forgive me a little bit at the beginning here, Terry. Are you currently seeing my PowerPoint, or you're not seeing my PowerPoint?
Not seeing your PowerPoint. So if you go to share and then choose the screen that your PowerPoint is on.
So I share number 2, and and I have to hit the word share. That would probably help.
Here you go.
It looks like it is working. Is it? Are you seeing
Almost. Yes.
Are you seeing the PowerPoint?
We are.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, again, thanks everyone for having me on today, and I'm excited to be here to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is the CSIL program. And the CSIL program is a program that has changed my life, both professionally, personally, socially. It has made a huge difference in my life, and I hope by sharing a little bit of my story today and then talking a bit more about what it is, I guess I should move to, how do I move to the next slide? 1 second, sorry. Whoops. There we go, we're moving. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the CSIL program is, what it means to be an employer, a little bit about the Individualized Funding Resource Center, and the Association of CSIL Employers, as well as a bit of an update on what's been happening from the Ministry of Health and the CSIL working group. And ultimately the real realities is that the CSIL program is known as one of the best kept secrets, I would say. For me, growing up, I happened to have cerebral palsy, and I grew up in a foster home setting, and I actually lived primarily with 5 other individuals, but I also had over 65 other foster children that went through my mom's home, my foster mom's home. And the place, my mom was an amazing woman. She was an English woman, but she was in her late 70s when she was taking care of me, and physically was just not something that she could continue to do. So I made a decision at 13 to move into a group home. And, at that time, I used to go into group home settings kind of for respite care. And so, and during those times, it was like going to camp, really. But for me, when I ended up making the decision to move into a group home, for me, it wasn't the greatest experience. For me, I ended up having some real challenges in regards to dealing with 7 mothers and 7 fathers with all different values and beliefs. And so I ended up having to really learn how to re-communicate with people. I had to deal with people with all kinds of personalities. Both many were excellent, and there was quite a few that weren't so great as well. So the group home living for me wasn't something that was all that successful, but I made the best of it, and I lived with 3 other individuals at that time, and we became quite the family of supporting one another. But for me, I was aging out of the system because I was in a group home that only could stay in until I was 19. And just like any other teenager, I very much wanted to live on my own, and my plan was to do that. And but when I started getting involved in the system, the recommendations that came to me, and I think probably for many of you, even today, because I went through the system 20, 30 years ago, 30 years ago, actually. And, the first recommendation was really looking at a facility or look at another group home setting because of my physical needs. I need someone to assist me with all aspects of my personal care. And I was really lucky to have friends and that kind of, were able to speak with me about their way of being able to live independently on their own. And I think that's where information is power. And I think that's when Terry puts this group together and meets on a regular basis, this really does give us power, because we get to find out that actually there are ways to actually come up with solutions that really do work. And CSIL Program is one of them. I was lucky in that I was able to find a co-op in the downtown area, and I was able to start the process of getting out and living on my own. I had to go through the whole system of requesting hours and going through all of that. Jumping right to individualized funding, for me, individualized funding really has allowed me to be successful in life. I became a foster parent of a wonderful 11-year-old boy. So this is an older picture now of Derek, who's standing beside me. He was probably, early 20s here, or late 18, 19. And my little guy, Mateo, he's actually 8 years old now. Need to update these pictures, Terry, that's for sure. But, as a foster parent, I was a single guy who had a disability and was given the opportunity to parent this fellow Derek. I became a Paralympic athlete, competing all over the world with a sport called bocce ball. It's an Italian sport similar to lawn bowling. I don't know if people have seen the bocce ball, but for me, I got on the scene, and because of individualized funding, I was able to find caregivers who could actually assist me with my sport at the time. And I could find the caregivers that had the skills, both to be able to do my physical care, but also be able to be sport-minded. And so I ended up representing Canada with my big year in 2004, where I won a gold medal for Canada in the individual competition of bocce, and then a bronze medal in 2004 for the pair competition. So, I got just amazing opportunity. Employment, I've been able to work with the BC Paraplegic Association, the Spinal Cord Injury BC for 5 years, doing systemic advocacy. And I was able to really move forward around my employment goals. Got married and had a beautiful boy named Mateo. And so some of my other achievements really has been, and I would say one of my biggest ones, other than my little guy Mateo, was being a co-founder of developing the CSIL program. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. I was part of the community, I was a community coordinator at the BC Personal Supports Network. Some of you may have remembered the good old EATI program, the Equipment and Assistive Technology Initiative. It was federal. We were able to get some funding for this program to provide assistive technology for people. I sit on the board of directors of the Association of CSIL Employers, and I'm currently the executive director of the Individualized Funding Resource Center. So what is the CSIL program? For those that don't know what the CSIL program, I really do call it the best, PC's best kept secret. People don't seem to find out about it until they're really far gone into the system not working for you, versus where it should be discussed with you as soon as you end up being eligible for home support. Home support, the CSIL program is something that should be a choice of one way or the other. So the CSIL program allows people with disabilities to have the funds come directly to you, and you become the direct employer of being able to hire personal attendants. It was formed in 1994, and it was in collaborations with other people with disabilities. So myself and Joanne Neubauer and Brian Cruikshank, the three of us, were asked to be part of a committee to look at how can we improve home support for people with disabilities. And the three of us unanimously said, the only way to improve it for people with disabilities is actually give the money to the individuals. Because who can spend the money the wisest is the people that utilize the funds themselves. Users of Tenor Service wanted to really create this model, and government actually listened and valued the concept of individualized funding, and that's when the CSIL program was born. Excuse me. The health authorities, so what is the difference? So those that don't know about the CSIL program, you still end up being assessed for home support, and then you get approved the hours. And with the agency system, the funds go directly to the agency which delivers your home support, and they provide you your support workers based on a schedule that is supposed to be discussed with you, but as many of you, if you're on the agency system, sometimes know that is challenging at times. The CSIL program is still assessed by the health authorities, but the funds go directly to you. Later on, if people are interested about the home support agency and the new changes that are coming within the home support agencies, don't hesitate to ask me later about that. Yeah, I don't have a lot of new information, but definitely some people are asking me how it affects the CSIL program. So we talk about the pros and the cons, I guess, of being on the CSIL program. But generally, the overwhelming positive rating of the program has been excellent. Basically, everyone talks about the increased freedom. I get to decide what the job description is and the activities that the individuals are going to do. I get to decide when they're going to be done, and how the personal care is going to be done. And I really have control over that, and I think that is the real desire and the positiveness of being on the CSIL program. And I really do feel the freedom. I have the freedom to come and go as I choose, and to organize and have the skills of the workers that I want to be with me when I want them to be. Now, of course, the cons of the CSIL program is, you're still limited by the rules of the CSIL of home support. You still are only able to get access to the same or similar amount of hours as you get within agency systems. And the reality is that there's a fair bit of work involved, as it is like running a small business. You need to have the energy, and you need to have the ability to be willing to learn new skills if you don't have the business skills. But I tell you, the reward is huge, and I'm sure later people can talk about how that reward has been amazing. Being eligible for the CSIL program, the word significant hours is something that is defined differently throughout the province. I know that we're working very hard with both the Ministry of Health and the health authorities to really come up with an eligibility that's consistent throughout the province. But to be eligible, you need to be assessed by a case manager and be eligible for home support. You must show that you are able to manage your own care, or have a system in place to be able to help you manage. You'll need to write a letter explaining why you would want to go on to the CSIL program. There are 2 phases to the program. There's a phase 1 and a phase 2. In phase 1, it's you as an individual that is responsible for managing the funding. You can hire, though, bookkeepers and other supports that can be paid for through the CSIL program. And a lot of people think about not going on to the CSIL program because of the amount of paperwork. And the majority of the paperwork really becomes around the payroll side of things. Doing the pay stubs each month, each pay period, doing the financial statements. But these things can all be done by a bookkeeper or an accountant that you're allowed to hire through the CSIL program. There's also something called recruitment facilitation, where you can get some assistance in regards to helping you with some of the HR management components. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Because I know some people say, what about finding caregivers, and how difficult it is to find caregivers, especially with the market these days. Phase two of the CSIL program is for those people that need some additional support, maybe because they can't always operate the CSIL program on their own. Maybe it's energy, maybe there's other reasons why. And you can form, there's two other options. One is developing a client support group where you can have 5 individuals, maybe family, friends, other supporters that could form a nonprofit society. And then that nonprofit society can operate the CSIL program with you and supporting you. The other one is around representation agreements. And representation agreements generally is something I always recommend people, able-bodied or if you have a disability, to have one, never mind about the CSIL program. The representation agreement allows you to be able to have someone else manage things when you're not able to. And you can designate someone or 2 people to be able to manage different parts of different components. And around the CSIL program, I think this is essential that if you are a CSIL employer now and you're on phase 1, even someone like myself has a representation agreement in place so that if I end up in hospital, I'm able to have my caregiver, I'd be able to pay my caregivers by utilizing the representation agreement. So the representation agreement, the health authorities recognize it, and you could designate 1 individual or 2 individuals to support you on doing this. Some people have been finding that this is just an easier process than developing a whole client support group option. So what does an employer do? And, like I said earlier, it really is like running a small business. You need to develop your own detailed support plan where you really list out what your needs are daily and during the week. Thinking about your transfers, going to washroom, shower, all the aspects of your physical care needs. I always recommend that to be a good employer, actually having this written down helps you be able to figure out how to come up with a job description. Your key questions that you're going to need for doing interviewing and hiring and doing that whole management piece, right? And yes, as an employer, you've got to handle both the good parts and the bad parts. The good parts of being able to hire the person you want, and then recognizing that perhaps you hired the wrong one. I've been doing this for 26 years now, and I still make my mistakes. But one of the toughest parts really is being the boss, and knowing where the lines are to be drawn. And doesn't mean that you don't develop relationships with your support person. I have great long relationships and friendships with many of my support workers. But at the end of the day, we all have these workers to be able to assist us in being able to meet our needs. And I think sometimes, that gets confusing. So having really clear guidelines is something that I always recommend. And we have a number of documents and stuff that we can provide to show people some examples of coming up with a contract with employee guidelines and things. Scheduling attendance and managing payroll obviously is another employer responsibilities, and of course being a lawful employer, knowing the employment standards laws, knowing what the minimum hourly call out is, for example, or paying somebody properly on a statutory holiday. We just had Easter, right? And knowing what is, when it comes to Easter, which is the official day off? Is it the Friday or is it the Monday? And officially, the day off is the Friday. And that is the day that you're responsible to pay as statutory holiday pay. On Monday, it's not an official day. If you've got the financial means to be able to pay somebody for the Monday on the CSIL program, you can go ahead and do that if you've got the ability to do so. Most people really run their budgets right to the line. And then there's just, bookkeeping and the ministry reports. And so each month you'll be responsible to provide the ministry, the health authority, how the money, how the money was spent. And again, I'm saying all of these things as being an employer. There's definitely payroll people that can help you manage that component. So it's important to know that it's, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to get your financial statements into the health authorities, because at the end of the day, they're looking to you to be a good employer. Both the Individualized Funding Resource Center and the Spinal Cord Injury BC have the CSIL workbook on their websites. This will give you a really nice breakdown of all the different components of being a good employer. If you aren't on the CSIL program and thinking about going on to the program, it's an expectation from the health authorities that you would have gone through this manual. And it's a manual that I worked on with the Spinal Cord Injury BC a good decade ago. And it continues to be a very useful book. People that have gone through it, I always recommend only, take on chapters. Don't go through the whole thing in one time, else it becomes very overwhelming. But it gives really good, solid information about the program and how to maneuver through it. After you've gone through your manual and stuff and that you're preparing to meet with your case manager, you want to be prepared to be able to educate your case manager about your needs. And this is a topic that's really important for people both that are on the program now and those people that are looking to go on to the program. And the key is around getting the right amount of home support hours. And I would say that the majority of people feel a struggle in regards to getting the hours that they need. But the reality is the case managers need to know from you exactly what it is that you require. And sometimes when we go back to developing that personal support plan, and you start jotting down your morning routine, your afternoon, your evening, and overnight care, by presenting this document and being able to talk through it, you give the case manager the information they need to be able to go back to their bosses to talk about the support hours that you need. This is also a time where you can also provide the letter stating why you want to go on to the program. I think I show you a sample of that coming up here in a minute. The case manager will need to support your request. And if you're already getting home support, and you're looking to go on to the CSIL program, they're liable to still continue to do a reassessment to reconfirm the hours that you're getting is what is currently needed. And the case manager will also use a tool called the InterRI tool. Many of you may know of or have heard of that. But ultimately, sometimes they do it through paper copy. Sometimes they bring their computer with them and they kind of go through a whole bunch of questions related to your abilities. Sometimes it feels like, that they're asking about my eyesight or my ear, can I hear? Sometimes it seems like they're looking at talking to someone who's a senior and stuff, but ultimately the information that they're gathering is just to really set a basis of trying to understand everything that you require. Really make sure that you emphasize your support needs though, and be sure that you're really clear with them about what you need. For people that aren't on the CSIL program yet, generally with home support, there is a per diem that is charged or a client contribution. For about 70% of home support clients, they don't actually pay for home support, and that number is a bit outdated, I think. But it's a calculation, and I'm sure there's been people in this group that have experienced some of the ups and downs of having to pay for the client contribution. But if you are someone who is employed or your spouse is employed, the maximum they can charge for the client contribution is $300 a month. If you're assessed for a client rate, there'll be two deposits that are deposited into your CSIL account. One is from the health authority, and then the other one is the remainder amount that you contribute from your client contribution. So if yours is $300, you would be putting that into your CSIL account each month. Talk a little bit about the individualized funding resource center. So the IFRC really it came out of the fact that we were looking to continue to make sure that the CSIL program was able to be recognized throughout the province, and there was a lot of issues that people were not getting the education and information that they needed around the program. And so 5 years ago, Chris Hoffley and myself and a number of others came together to develop the nonprofit organization, and was really looking at trying to figure out ways to be able to do this in an educational format and information sharing as well. And so we provide, through the nonprofit organization, workshops and information sessions. We try to bring the workbook alive, because the workbook is fantastic, but it really works better sometimes when you actually can bring it alive and with people and can discuss it together. We provide supports to the application process. There's a lot to the application process at times, from developing backup plans to creating your first budget, and just doing all the different components that are necessary around the program. We try to provide key tips as possible for to really have a positive relationship with the health authorities and the case managers. And we also provide payroll services. So assisting with setup, including CRA, because you have to open up a business, a payroll account through Canadian Revenue Agency. And also you need to have a WorkSafe BC account to protect your employees. So if your employees get injured on the job, WorkSafe BC is able to cover your employees if they are injured. We also handle within the payroll just all aspects of doing the payroll twice a month, doing T4s at the end of the year, and then submitting the financial statements to the health authorities. And then there's recruitment facilitation, and we have a database of caregivers that are looking for work. We have about 200 employees that are in our database. And what we do is throughout the province, we are helping people with that recruitment component. And so we are able to assist individuals with that. We also, within recruitment, also can assist with other HR aspects, such as helping pull together a contract between you and your employee. If you're dealing with problems related to staffing issues and things, or clarifications around employment standards, those kinds of things as well. Some of the work that we do in the communities, we have a Pathways to Independent peer group, and it meets in Vancouver, and we're in the process of trying to develop one over the next few months in Victoria and in Kelowna. So where CSIL employers can get together, and people that are interested in community living being able to get together and talk about areas around mainly around the CSIL program, but we touch on other independent living areas as well. The Right Fit Pilot Project is a project where we are connecting people in the Lower Mainland with housing providers. So connecting around the issues of finding rental units and subsidized rental units. So the Right Fit Pilot Project has gone on for just over 2 years now. And we've been able to connect about 14 individuals with service providers that were looking to fill their units. We also have CLBC host agency status. So if somebody is getting CLBC support, we are able to help them with some of the aspects of individualized funding. And then we attend different events throughout the community. So creating an employer contract. So this just kind of talks a little bit about some of the things that need to be considered when creating your employee contracts, such as how does your payout vacation work? Some people pay vacation pay on every check. Others pay vacation pay as an accumulative component. Sick day policies, what happens when somebody is sick? How do you want them to respond? Most people with disability, most CSIL employers aren't really able to pay a sick pay usually, but having a policy in place of handling when somebody has a cold, if your immune system is low, for example, having somebody that's sick may be a challenge for you. So being able to be really clear about that, or being clear that if they do come into work, they might need to wear a mask if you have a compromised immune system. Length of training period and probationary period. To be clear, employment standards really states clearly what the probationary period can be, but you can decide how the training component is going to go. Really any other job requirements. Do you require a criminal record check or medical checks? Talk about evaluations. I think it's one of the weakest sides that we all do as employers is to forget that it's really important to do an evaluation every year at least with your employee, or maybe every 6 months when you first hire them, to really let them know what they're doing well. It doesn't always mean that there's something wrong by doing an evaluation. An evaluation is a chance to really praise the work that they're doing as well. And then there's other components. I have an oath of confidentiality because my workers have to attend when I'm at my office, and they may hear of some clients that I'm working with, so they're really important to follow confidentiality rules. Payment to family member policy. The Ministry of Health does have a payment to family member policy, and you are allowed to hire family members. You're allowed to hire without having to go through a process. You can hire your brothers and sisters, your cousins, those kinds of things. If you are in a situation where you're looking at your parent, child, or spouse, then you have to get permission from the health authority. And there is a document online that you can get access to allow you to be considered. But it really is based on certain exceptions and certain components. So if there's people that are interested in knowing more about the payment to family member piece, be happy to discuss that at any point. The Association of CSIL Employers. So this is a different organization than the Individualized Funding Resource Center. So to be clear, so the Individualized Funding Resource Center really kind of works with individuals more on the day-to-day activities and assists people with that education and information. The Association of CSIL Employers is really a group comprised of CSIL employers that have come together to really look at the program itself and looking at working with government to change policies. And it's really a collaborative effort, and we try our very best to make sure that as an association that we're representing all 1,000 CSIL employers throughout the province. Yep, there's over 1,000 people on the CSIL program now. It's amazing because when we first began, I remember when the ministry was thinking maybe there'd be about 10 people or so that would take up the CSIL program. And in the first year, I think we went well over 50 or 60 people on the program. And here we are today with 1,000 people on the program. To me, that number is still very low. I think there's a lot more people out there that need to know about the program and need to be aware that it's available as an option to them. So under the Association of CSIL Employers, they really are looking to move forward in trying to build a further community of CSIL employers and trying to bring everyone together to look at these changes. We're looking at creating an email list and a Facebook. There is a Facebook page for ACE, and you can find that under CSIL ACE, and then it would come up under Facebook, and then we have an administrator there that keeps. It's a closed group actually, so CSIL employers can talk amongst themselves. So basically, when you connect for the first time, there'll be a series of questions, and then that way they can try and determine if you are a CSIL employer. And if you're, and you don't have to just be the person who uses the person in the wheelchair that uses it, the CSIL program. It could be a family member who is part of the client support group, or if you're a representative that they're looking to bring everyone together to have these discussions. One of our biggest successes over the last probably 7 years or so has been the hourly rate increase. We had a period of time of about 12 years that there was no hourly rate increase at all. Over the last 8 years or so, we have been able to have about a 25% CSIL rate increase. So this has been very important for CSIL employers. We have a lot more work to do related to changing the system. Such as wait lists. A lot of people find that to apply for the CSIL program, it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And some people are even telling us that it can be up to a year to go on to the CSIL program. And I think, this is definitely something of concern for all of us. in having that kind of wait list. And this is something that we're addressing through the Ministry of Health side. Eligibility is another one of who is eligible. And there's a lot of discussions right now just around, what does it mean by having significant care needs, or, and who's eligible for the CSIL program when it comes to care needs. Do you need a certain number of hours to be eligible for the CSIL program? And what we're doing at the Ministry of Health level and the Health Authority level is really having good open dialogue and trying to get all the health authorities working from the same eligibility and same criteria. There's been, for example, contracts, and many people that live in the Vancouver coastal area, we've just become aware that the CSIL contract has come out, which is fantastic. And this is the first iteration where we're looking at a CSIL contract that's going to be the same, or should be the same throughout the whole province. So if you do get your CSIL employer contract and you want to share that with me, that would be fantastic. I've received many emails with the new contract and from Vancouver coastal side, and it is what we were expecting it to be, and are encouraging CSIL employers as part of the Association of CSIL Employers to sign those CSIL contracts. Assessments and annual reassessments, I think this is one we hear about quite often, of concerns around the inconsistency of assessments, and that if I live in one area of the province versus another area, that I might get different hours. And that is something that we're really trying to address at the working group level. And I think that there's significant interest on all parties to have that be dealt with. But having that dealt with, that doesn't go to the lowest common denominator, because I think that's the real concern that a lot of people have, is that when you start wanting to look at the whole assessment aspect, we don't want it to get worse, right? And I know that I get some phone calls and emails saying it feels like we're institutionalizing the community, where I'm only allowed one shower a week, or maybe if I'm lucky, I can get 2 showers a week through my health authority. And I think that does need to be looked at. We can talk about some of the things that you can do at the moment to express to your case managers to why you need to have a shower more than 1 or 2 times a week. But I think we need to be really showing clearly that people with disabilities are working, they're involved in their community, they're out and about, and it's part of community living, frankly, that people have showers on a daily basis. Reassessments is another stressful time for people. We get lots of phone calls when reassessments come around, and the health authorities and the Ministry of Health tell us that, that the majority of the reassessments don't end up in a reduction of hours. We sometimes worry, because we do hear the ones that people have been reduced in their hours upon reassessments. There's been a lot of questions around, is there a need for reassessments? And so we've been putting this forward, and if you're stable and you've been stable for a number of years, is there a way to not have reassessments done? And that's something that we continue to talk about. Portability is another one, and we're getting closer to having a new policy around portability that will make it easier to move from one health authority to another one, that you don't have to be worried that moving from Vancouver to Burnaby would mean a change in my hours, and that if both situations are exactly the same, should there not be a process to make that easier and not have to deal with the stress of that process. So that's being looked at. Allowable expenses, there's been a number of changes within the allowable expenses. There is a new 2018 document, came out later in 2018. Happy to share that with anyone as well. I'm trying to think of some of the components, such as criminal record checks are now allowed to be paid for through your CSIL funding. That was one of the big ones. Accounting support, getting to be with the times of how much it costs to do accounting supports. You're now able to, through your CSIL funding, be able to purchase a printer scanner so that you can do documents easier back and forth between your payroll person, and to be able to just document things better. Then there's the allowing you to do e-transfers, to paying your caregivers by e-transfer. In the past, you always had to use checks, but now you can actually do e-transfers through that. Having said that, I should probably mention that Vancouver Island Health Authority, I know we've received a number of reports now that Vancouver Island Health Authority hasn't allowed that new policy to go through on their side. And that's something that we're working with them on now, but it was a decision that everyone across the province as employers can get to be able to do that technique and use that possibility. These were some nice testimonials of some people, and let me just see if there's a few other kind of key points. I think, in regards to the current state, is that we are continuing to work with the working group now. And I think it's really important that if there's some areas that you would be wanting to see as some change within the CSIL program, it'd be great for you to be able to voice those and be able to share that information with me of things that you would like to see change. But also at the same time, if you are a CSIL employer, we would love to see you get involved. And we'd like to create opportunities for people all across the province to be more involved around the CSIL program and be involved in some of the major decisions that are happening around the program. So, I know that Ken Kramer, Tim Lewis, and myself have been on the executive for quite a long time, and we're looking to expand our committee. So if you're interested in being involved and to be active around the CSIL employer CSIL program, we'd be pleased to have you there. So, Terry, I think that's kind of my formal presentation side. I've covered way too much in a very short period of time. I tried to touch upon different components, but I am very happy for the group to take me in any direction they would like around the CSIL program. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Paul. Yeah, that was amazing, interesting information. Before I just open up to questions, and then maybe Paul, you can stop your share on your side so we can see people, or I have a better view of people. I was going to ask two questions for myself. One is, this may seem like a really silly question, but case manager, is that like a person in your community? Is that like, where do you go to get your case manager? Who is that?
Great question, Terry, and one I should have said from the beginning, that's for sure. A case manager is somebody that you receive once you go do an intake process. So each health authority, and you can find it on their websites, under home support, you can contact an intake worker. So you contact an intake worker and you provide your basic information. And this is the time where you would tell them that you are in the need of home support. Tell them a bit more about some of the physical needs. Perhaps you were getting support from a family member and that family member is no longer available, or your financial situation's changed and no longer have the ability to afford to have a caregiver if you were finding it on your own through other ways. So, but you need to be really clear that you would like to have a case manager come and to do a home support assessment. So again, this is for someone that has not got on to home support at all. You have to get on to home support first before you can move forward on the CSIL program.
Okay. And so what if you were on home support and then you got off home support and now you want to go back on?
So if you've gone off for a period of time, depending on how long you've been off, your file probably had been closed. And then you would just contact them again, letting them know that you were on home support at one point and that you need to come back on for the similar circumstances.
Sure.
Could I ask a question?
Go for it, Miriam.
I called Fraser Health. My doctor keeps submitting forms, but the first question they ask is, can you get in and out of the shower? And I'm still at the point where on a good day I can, and then they just close the file. The kind of help I need is when I get it, I do really well. When I don't, I have to lay down most of the time because I just keep aggravating things. And so they hadn't heard of this program when I first called. Now when I call and ask about it, they say they'll look at it. I send them to the website, they go read about it, and they still really just don't seem to be able to know what to do. Is there some, I seem to be in an endless loop.
Yeah, it's one of those tough situations in that, to be eligible for home support. Let's not talk about the CSIL program for a second. Talking about home support. Home support provides areas around physical personal care.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you have ups and down days where some days you need physical care and some days you don't. It just depends on how your body is reacting that day. Am I getting that right?
Yes, and I'd rather wait, till orchestrate an uptime, even if I spend all my energy doing the physical care, but then it leaves the rest of the stuff, the, eating and cleaning, and that's the kind of thing. Maybe I should accept the other so I can do the other. I don't know where the line's drawn.
So home support generally doesn't provide very much in the way of housekeeping or meal preparation, to none really, depending upon, some people are able to get a little bit of that, but when it comes to the CSIL program side of it, you're going to need to have a fair bit of physical, it's physical care, and it's generally every day. Do people get onto the program with less than need of every day? Yes, but it's not. But that continues to be discussed at a high level of trying to determine what is it's supposed to be. And in my opinion, when the CSIL program began 26 years ago, it literally was anybody that received home support would have the option to move on to the CSIL program, with generally a minimum need of 2 hours a day. If you didn't need it on the weekend, for example, because you had family members or those kinds of things, even then people could be at that time eligible. But that's not so much the case anymore. But under your circumstances of up and down, without getting too involved in your personal situation, I'd be happy for you to send me an email and I'd be happy to chat with you a little bit more about it. They do allow certain circumstances, so it'd be wise for me to understand a bit more about your ups and downs and some of the care that you required when your down is, and I don't want to get into that over the internet with you.
All right, I really appreciate it. I'm thinking of a friend who I think would have greatly benefited from this program. Basically gave up and stopped getting treatment, and I think with this program he would still be around. He just found the restrictions of being in a home, or even better at home. He wasn't able to sync with all the workers, and I think this would have made a life different changing moment for him. So I'm so proud of what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
I
Thank
may
you for saying
not
that, and
qualify
thank you
for it, but I'm so glad to have got this information for others, because I may be at the top end of ability range at the moment, but people I know are not, and so I'd be happy to share this with them too. And I think my doctor's been trying to find something. I would like to hand them this recording and say, this is something that's available, because I don't think they know either.
Yeah, let's get that information out there. Thank you, Marion.
So, Paul, when you have your hours, can you split them up through the day? Or does it need to be, say you're given 4 hours or 6 hours or whatever, can you split them up throughout the day, or does it need to be all at one time?
That's a great question. And with the CSIL program, you do not have to have it all at one time. There are some employment standards laws that we have to consider, but generally, if you're given 6 hours a day, you can, usually at a minimum is a 2-hour call out. Having said that, within a 12-hour period, if the person lives close enough and it's reasonable, because the reality is you've got to make the job attractive enough to have a caregiver willing to come, or home support worker. But you could have someone come for a couple hours in the morning, and then perhaps come for an hour at lunchtime, and then perhaps dinner time for a couple of hours. So long as it's within a 12-hour period, you can do 1-hour shifts. But again, it's more about who's going to be willing to come and do a 1-hour shift, right? Kind of thing. And having someone, a lot of people actually hire, amazingly enough, in the same building or in their own community. And I know for myself, I don't require someone that is that medical, have a huge medical background. For me, it's about someone who's got some common sense and willing to learn. So for me, I've been able to find sometimes people in my area that I was at a coffee shop, and we started chatting, and all of a sudden they became one of my great caregivers, so.
Cool.
I see Jeff had his hand up there.
Go ahead, Jeff. I think you can unmute yourself, so. If not, I can do it for you.
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
I have a little bit of a unique situation. I was denied phase 2. The reason I was denied is that they said that my needs are too complex. So I live in a care home of 199 other people that are seniors.
Right, Jeff. First of all, I'm sorry that you're in a place that I can see clearly you don't want to be at.
No.
Yeah, I can see that. And, I think, I'm trying to think of what I could ask you that doesn't give so much personal information, but, in regards to the complexity of care, it's interesting. It's the complexity of care that usually makes people eligible for the CSIL program if the complexity is a lot of physical need, right, and personal care need. Jeff, I think again, understanding more of the background and understanding some information, I too would be happy to speak with you, Jeff.
That would be great.
No more. We've worked with many people that that were in extended care facilities, and have assisted them to work to get out through hard work, right? And usually the health authorities have some specific issues or concerns, and it's sometimes perhaps it's us having some discussions about understanding what those concerns are. The health authorities deal with a lot of financial troubles in regards to being able to afford to be able to offer the amount of hours. At the same time, you can only deal with your own circumstance, and your circumstance is that you want to live independently on your own. And to do that, these are the hours that I require to do it. And, let's chat about it some more, Jeff.
Yeah, because it's only a 4-hour period that I need a day.
Is that right, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they said no.
Okay. And they're all related to personal care, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'd be happy to chat with you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure.
I can connect to you guys. Does anyone else have some questions? If you do, you can just unmute yourself. Yeah, Michelle, I can unmute you if you want. Hold on. Go ahead.
Hi. I've been with Fraser Health, and I did all the requirements for the CSIL program, which is filling out the daily schedule, doing the letter that you mentioned earlier, and doing the application or the job description. And then they said, phone your case manager. So I phoned my case manager, who happened to be Komal Dillon. And she said, well, you're not going to get anything more than you're getting now. And I said, well, she said, what do you need? And I said, well, I could use help with cutting up vegetables, for instance. And she said, oh, they're not allowed to do that. And they're not allowed to leave the house. And you're only going to get 2.5 hours. So I kind of just gave up at that point.
Right. And in regards to your physical care side, do you need to be transferred from your wheelchair and stuff, or on your own?
Yes and no. I can use a transfer board, so I can transfer out of bed.
Right.
And I can transfer in the washer, not into the shower. I need help getting in and out of the shower, and I need help getting into bed. But most of the time I can transfer without falling.
Right. But there are some safety issues, it sounds like, and some safety concerns for yourself in regards to doing those transfers.
Yes, and there's also a problem right now is that I've just moved into a new unit, and they renovated the whole unit because it hadn't been done in years, but the people that had renovated it did a terrible job. So they have to redo the bathroom. Like the toilet is kind of in the middle of the room. And,
right.
And the wheel-in shower has got like a 4-inch lip on it,
Right.
So it's a bit.
Yeah, that's problematic. Michelle, how long ago did you apply for the CSIL program?
I think it must have been, well, I've been doing this off and on for a couple of years.
Is that right, eh?
Yes. So I finally just gave up. I think it was last year.
Yeah. So, and so I know that, and you happen to mention Fraser Health Authority, right?
Yes.
Within. So, I know that they themselves are going through some searching in regards to who should be eligible and who should not be eligible around this area, and something that continues to be discussed generally. And again, it goes back to inconsistent information for the health authorities. So not necessarily their fault, it's interpretation of Ministry of Health policies. And that's why we've been trying to bring all the health authorities together and the Ministry of Health so that we can actually have these discussions, so that we can say, okay, here's a circumstance, how would we all handle this? So that we can see consistently and have consistent policy on this. The whole meals and cleanings and stuff, it's something that 16 years ago got eliminated from home support. You know, and they do some of that cleaning and some meal prep, but it's usually connected to a personal care task, usually, meaning that if they're assisting you with your shower and that they're waiting for a point in your shower, that they could run and cut your vegetables for you.
Right, right.
Or something like that. But they generally don't allow a lot of time. Sometime they allow some time for meal prep, but a lot of it's, depending on which health authority you talk to, it could be some of it's meal prep, but some of it is just warming up your food. And I know that a lot of individuals are concerned about the health aspect of just warming up frozen food, right? And
which is so healthy for you, frozen food,
right?
You know?
Right. But these are the things that we need to continue to hear, and we need people like yourself to kind of come forward and say, hey, this is my concern. This is, for me to not cost the system more, this is what I require. And maybe it is only 2 hours a day or 2.5 hours a day. Maybe you need more, I'm not sure. But, if we look at the safety standpoint, right, that there may be a good legitimate reason to be providing you somebody to help you with those transfers, maybe, or help you with the things. But it's about how to present it and how to get the ear of someone who's willing to understand your situation. So,
sorry. The one thing that really frustrates me is that I have to be here at 5 o'clock. I have to be home by 9 o'clock, and I'm really active. I'm out most of the time. I ride horses. I used to scuba dive up until a while ago. A couple of years now, and I attend different meetings, and I just find it's really frustrating because I have to leave early to be home in time for these caregivers.
Yeah. Case in point to why the CSIL program should be an option for you, right? I think you just clearly identified why CSIL should be an option for you. And should people have to come up with cases. I mean, again, I've always said the original intent is supposed to go, you have the choice between, and obviously we're not quite there yet in regards to that, but you brought forward a really good case, so that I think you could, that we should have some further discussions on too, so.
Great.
Again, because we're on World Wide Web, I don't want to ask you too many more personal questions, so.
I think I have your number actually somewhere.
Good. Okay, Michelle. That'd be great.
Miriam has her hand up there.
Sometimes I think it's easier to have an advocate speak for you, to be able to say what your needs are. It's so difficult to speak for yourself sometimes. Just having Paul say that there's sort of an advocacy and some templates set up as to how to get the attention of people who are really busy and have 30 people they're dealing with at a time, all at different stages. It's hard to allocate the resources, but if in your day eating is part of the needs to live independently, I don't understand why it is not an option. Especially since it's, I find it sometimes hard to stand for the length of time, do my best to keep, small packs of things in the fridge. With just a little tiny bit of help, the improvement in my health goes way up. And then the resources cut back, and then my health goes down. And trying to reamp the resources, it just doesn't seem to make sense that when it's working, it's stopped, and when it's until you're not doing well again. So I don't know how you can, when you say they have to reassess, well, they reassess and see that it's working really well, and then you're back to not being able to do again.
Right. Yeah, no, it's I think when you first started out talking about how having someone present with you when communicating, we've seen a lot of success with that as well. It also gives you a moment sometimes to breathe and think a little bit too, right? I think, people's anxiety tends to go up, and case managers don't mind that you bring somebody else with you. In fact, they should be encouraging it for those, even myself, my memory when dealing with it at that moment, right? And it's always, I've always found it easier to help someone else than helping yourself. And I bet you would find that to be the case as well. And I think that's something that it is quite okay to bring somebody else along that can help kind of trigger your brain to, hey, don't forget to talk about this, or don't forget to talk about that. Even though it may be written down on your plan, being able to hear you talk about it sometimes helps case managers understand more. Yeah, thank you, Mary.
I was thinking that it's kind of reminds me of when I first got injured and they were like evaluating my cost of future care, right?
Oh,
yes. And I was 24 years old at the time and thinking, of course, like I just was not going to have any care, right? Even though I'm a quadriplegic, I'm going to figure out how to do everything myself. But, and in time that happened, right? But now as I'm aging and getting older and trying to like manage work and having a child and my home, and it's gotten a lot, right?
Yeah.
And what I've realized is that it's very helpful to be really brutally honest with myself. And in fact, like think about it, like I don't think about it, maybe if I got more help with my personal care, then I would be able to do all those other things a little bit more, right? Or, vice versa, right? So if they're going to pay for, help get me help, that's going to help me with my personal care, then that would give me maybe a little more energy to do some of those other things that right now I'm paying someone to help me with, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think it is about balancing life, right? And we hear a lot of people talk about independence. Are you there?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to ask something, though. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm not doing this very well.
Okay, no problem. Just let's let Paul finish his.
Okay, thank you.
All I was going to say is that, that independence component, it's hard to know for yourself in regards to, do you want to take an hour to put on your shirt versus having a caregiver that could do it for you in about 3 minutes, so that you can do another component of your day. And energy-wise, never mind the energy that it takes. And I know many people that say that they've been doing it this way for a long time, and they're burnt out and tired, and that their whole life has just become their care. So I think I think you speak really well, Terry, of just trying to. It's time to reevaluate, right? For people, everyone needs to evaluate what is important in their lives, and and when you have a little one, Terry, I know that as well, right? Priorities change.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, who is that one that had a question there?
Yes, it's Caroline here.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, I'm not here for myself. I'm here for a neighbor of mine, and sadly, I'm getting the answer. She is going through what you guys are going through. So it just seems to be pretty common with them denying it.
So denying, you're referring to denying access to the CSIL program. Is that what you mean?
Yes, she doesn't. I have spinal cord injury, but I don't need CSIL. I have home health care, but only once a week, and that's fine. But that's why she's not on this right now. But she does for other things.
Does she need care every day?
Yes, she does. And she does get that through home health care.
And does she get care in the morning and at night, or just in the morning?
Yes, she does.
Okay, and what health authority?
Downtown Vancouver, which is
Vancouver Coastal.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so
I even sat in on a meeting with her with the manager of Vancouver Coastal Health, and there's just, it seems to be no way. I don't even know why they have this program. They just really seem to really. So
it's interesting, you know, because I think when it comes to people that are being denied for the CSIL program, you know, we have to ask ourselves, are they eligible based on what we understand it to be? And, you know, if she's receiving home support, if she's receiving morning and evening care, and maybe at least, you know, anywhere from 3 or 4 hours a day on home support, the eligibility of hours and things like that, it should not matter if you're on home support or the CSIL program, right?
Right.
So, you know, I wouldn't say that everybody is not eligible for the CSIL program. I would not say that. I would say that, you know, there's sometimes misinformation in regards to eligibility around CSIL program. And
Right.
I think, you know, some health authorities, and I'll use Fraser Health as an example. Fraser Health has come up with a system where they only have, when people are applying for the CSIL program, they have 4 designated case managers that are knowledgeable about the CSIL program.
Ooh.
What they do there is that you would bring it forward to your case manager, who's probably not a CSIL case manager right away if they're on home support already. And then that case manager would then request a CSIL case manager to come in to do an official assessment.
Oh, I'll tell her that.
No, hang on. So that's Fraser Health, though. In Vancouver, you know, they don't have it set up like that. So a lot of their case managers don't deal with a lot of the CSIL program side, right? You know, when they look at the thousands of people that they support in Vancouver Coastal, there's
Right.
about 300 CSIL employers in Vancouver Coastal, right? Or approximately.
Right.
So the majority of the caseload is not CSIL related. So there may be some talk, I'm not sure, in Vancouver Coastal about coming up with CSIL designated case managers. I'm not aware of that at this point. But again, that's where education needs to come in sometimes.
Absolutely.
There's definitely, you know, it's hard to know, and the rules seem to change a little bit from time to time. So I wouldn't give up on the CSIL program if you think.
Oh, I don't think she is, and I apologize for kind of butting into your program here.
No, not at all. I think it's good for you to have information that you can share with others. But
yeah, knowledge is power. I'm so glad that you're doing this for people.
Yes, and you know, if this individual is having challenges with the getting onto the CSIL program, sure would love to speak with her to understand why she may have been denied, if she has been denied. And I'd be pleased to discuss that with her a bit more. Because you know, there may be a legitimate reason that I don't know of, right?
Me as well. Am I able to save this podcast and show it to her?
We are recording it, and it will be posted up on YouTube.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I can send you the link once it's
okay. Cool.
Once it's posted.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Caroline. Miriam, you have your hand up there.
If you qualify, like Better at Home comes here to do just some basic stuff, and I'm really grateful for it. But they have like a template of what they're allowed to do, like you know. Well, I think they actually source it out to somebody else. And so the money's already being spent through the Better at Home. I paid for my own care for many years. And I just think it could be used a bit better, like your comment about how, like if they follow the template, it doesn't do, you know, there's just a couple little things. Oftentimes if I ask, they'll go outside, but I don't want to get them in trouble going. So I say, what are you allowed to do in your job description from the company you're working for, the organization you're working for? Is this allowed? Because I don't want them getting into trouble. But as an example, breaking up a couple of boxes or something that, well, 6 weeks later, it's still a project that's there for me. I just can't do it and still do all the other stuff in the day I have to do. Getting that specific help. I mean, they're coming. It's just a matter of getting it directed in a way that would help a bit better.
Yeah, Marion, your circumstances is not. I wish I would tell you it's unique, but it's not. And I think you're right to the caregivers that are coming in from the agency systems, they really are only allowed to do what's on the list that they can do. And I think your response is very good in regards to not making them do something that they're not allowed. I always think about, the light bulb, that my light bulb goes out into an agency system. Technically, they can't change my light bulb. I think that there needs to be some common components to this that we need to continue to explore and try to work on to change. As many of you that are on home support right now knows that things are going to be coming in-house soon. That through the, they have until April 1st for Victoria, Vancouver Island, Fraser Health, and Vancouver Coastal to set up their system to hire internally, and agencies that provide home support currently to care to people is going to be eliminated within the year. There's some pros and cons with that, right? And I think we learn more about that. It shouldn't, technically speaking, that doesn't resolve your issue, Miriam, because it'll still be within the system. I always hope that on home support side, which I don't deal with I'm more of a CSIL guy, right? But on this home support side, what I would love to see happen with these health authorities is that we're able to bring people together that are experiencing the changes and bring them together to get feedback and be able to work collaboratively, because obviously the Ministry of Health has made a decision to do this. That's moving, right? It seems to be moving, right? But what can we do to work with them currently, right? As people with disabilities are living with the system at the moment, the fighting back of that may be challenging. The issue really is now about what can we do so that when the transition happens, people that receive home support from the workers that they've had for the last 10 years will still be coming to their home. Is there a way to do that? And can we talk to the health authorities about that as well, right? So, but there's a lot we don't know, a lot they don't know either. They have a year to pull it all together. It's been a directive, and they're working on that. So, yeah, it's I think that
and the caregivers are kind. Can tell that they'd like to do it. They just don't want to. They've got jobs and their families to protect as well.
Yes.
And I truly don't want them doing something that's outside of what they're supposed to do, and yet you need the help. Like it's difficult. So
yeah, and I guess and Miriam, it does get back to common sense things to some of it, right? And I also think I've seen the flip sides too, where health authorities have dealt with clients that are asking people to do their lawn, or the opposite degree, I guess I'm trying to say, that isn't related to the home support side, and that worries me, right? That it doesn't worry me. These things need to happen too, right? If you own your own,
it's hard to tell what somebody else needs, And
you can't physically do it, right? But
yeah,
the system is set up to provide people the care in the home. We all believe that it would also mean meal preparation and housekeeping and all that kind of stuff. And
well, I think the
think
way
we need to get back.
that
We need
maybe
to
I
get back
start, maybe a way to start putting it is, I was telling somebody recently that I've had tie-on shoes twice in the last 12 months. Somebody asked me if I could wear a pair of tie-on shoes. I'd say yes. I've done it twice in the last 12 months, one to go to a funeral and once because I had a really exceptionally good day and thought I could maybe get them on and off. But if a health authority person says, well, can you, do up your shoes, I would probably answer yes, even though I've only done it twice in the past year. If they don't ask the question, how often have you done it, say in the past month, I would say never.
right.
That's sort of I don't understand how you fit in there, in the questions or to get the help you need.
Right.
I think that's like that part where you have to be really brutally honest with yourself, Miriam, is what I'm saying, right? So yes, I can do up a zipper. Sometimes it takes me 30 minutes to do up my zipper. And as Paul was saying earlier, like, is that really worth your time when it takes someone 30 seconds to do it, right? So, sometimes you have to answer no, right? Even though you did it twice in a year, really, like, they don't think that. They're thinking, can you do it? That means you can do it every single day. So think about it from that other perspective, right? So, if it's really challenging for you, then the answer is probably no, you can't really do it. You can't do it how they would do it or someone, right?
Or to find the right way to put it. Yeah. Well, this is really helpful. Really appreciate it, and I will look forward to getting the link to send it to, including my doctors, because I think it's really important for them to know what steps they need to take. And also, I'd love to talk to you, Paul, in line for a spinal cord stimulator on a waiting list. And so, but I don't think it's going to get better. I think even if I have that, I may be more comfortable, but I think it limits what you can do too. So
right.
I don't think I'm supposed to lift and do, like, there's certain restrictions there that I don't think I'm set up at home to take care of. Once I get that in, I don't think it's gonna lessen my need, is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, I look forward to learning more about that part of it too. I'm not as aware of that, but thank you. We'll talk about that. Well,
another question that sort of, on the, I guess, maybe more negative side, because I know a few people that are on CSIL, and some of them have had not very good experiences with their care, and maybe it's, they seem fine. I've know some people, as you probably know, that have been stolen from and, maybe treated badly, taken advantage of. So what are your sort of tips for hiring? Like, I'm sure you haven't always had the greatest things happen. As you said, you've had to fire people as well, right? But, how do you protect yourself as an employer?
Great question. And, and I've gone through the theft thing as well. I'm not alone. I'm afraid more of us have dealt with that. And I think part of that is, as people with disabilities, we need to trust more, because the reality is physically I can't get in and out of my wallet. I need someone to be able to get that cash out of my wallet. And how many times have we done that with just a stranger, never mind our caregivers? But what can we do to protect ourselves? Well, I mean, one thing is I've learned that I have to look at my bank statements every month. I have to look at my visa statements. I have to look at all of those things. Plus, that's just a generally good thing to do in general, because there's mistakes that happen. there's the realities of having strong rules about it's not okay for your caregiver to give you your visa back tomorrow. It should go back as soon as you use it, right?
Wait a sec.
Yep. Uh-oh. And is that you, Terry, saying just a sec?
No, that was, I think, Michelle. I muted you, Michelle.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. I think that we have to be tough, and I think, again, is this relationship that develops between you and your caregiver. And, I'm not saying that you can't trust people. You just need processes in place to not allow things to happen, right? So it literally is, thinking about if there's a debit card, the reality is you should have 2 debit cards, one that has a maximum limit of $100, or a Visa card that only has a maximum of $200. You can set up different things actually with your bank. And the more that you can set up those things, at least you can minimize your loss. If it's going to happen, I'm afraid. I mean, mine was over, filling up my gas tank, right? And then the gas card just stayed with the person a few days longer, and all of a sudden, I get a call from the bank, from the gas station saying, it's time to get an oil change again for your car. I'm like, oil change for my car? I have a van. And that's when I realized that, I've been compromised, right? And those are tough things. But Terry, I want to say that we have to live with risk as well. There's going to be an element of risk. Being on the CSIL program, for example, there are tons of risks, right? There's a risk of hiring the wrong caregiver. But risk must happen, and sometimes there'll be some failures, right? And you're going to make mistakes. But it's really getting back on that horse and just put systems in place to learn from it. Every time I review my employee guidelines, I remember my employee guidelines when I first started, it was 1 page. I think I'm up to 8 pages now on my employee guidelines, right? And that's learning, right? And it doesn't say anything negative to the person that you've hired. You've just gone through learning, and you take that learning every year you change because you've learned something from the previous year, right? So, yeah.
Paul, it's Linda. Can I make a comment or two?
Sure.
Okay, I've got a couple. One, I had a caregiver for over 6 years, and she was the most reliable. In fact, I took her to my son's wedding in Dominican Republic and paid for her trip. And one day, she went in my CSIL checkbook and stole 3 checks, and I guess getting a check that I'd written to her, she kind of forged them and cashed the check. And when I went to do my financial statement, and I called, Fraser Health to Val, and I said, Val, this will not balance. She said, what about these 3 checks? I said, I didn't write those checks. And she'd taken a whole lot. And so I went to the police, and they went to the bank, and the bank said they couldn't do anything. But then when Miss Policeman walked in the bank and said, I had never written a check, this lady was on welfare and could only earn $500 a month. So I'd never written a check for over $500 in over 6 years. And so the police told the bank they should have picked it up.
Well done.
Because for 6 years, they'd never cashed a check over 500. And suddenly there were checks for like 800 and 900. And so I did get all my funds back. The bank
Excellent.
made them up. And so that was helpful. I just have a couple more comments. You were talking about home support now becoming part of the ministries or
part
the
of
health authorities.
Health authorities, yeah.
Yeah, and I have concern for those of you who don't know me, I work in community health and I work for Translate. I have concern about the home support workers who have 2 or 3 jobs in order to maintain their family. And now if they have one employer, they won't be able to maintain those 2 or 3 jobs. Because some of them now work for more than one agency. They'll work for one agency during the week and another on the weekends or another at night in order to maintain 2 or 3 jobs. And they will lose that ability, I think, when they go to to one authority. My third comment is I was running into trouble a few years ago, and I went to Paul and his organization, and it was really, really helpful. So for any of you are dealing with aging with a disability, and your hours aren't enough to support your aging with a disability, and you can't get anywhere, I would suggest that you phone Paul. That's my third one. My fourth one is I have one of those wonderful case managers in Fraser Health Authority that deals only with CSIL. And last year when she came to see me, I did that whole task analysis, that 7-page task analysis thing that says how long does it take you to brush your teeth and how long does it take you to brush your hair. And when she came in, she said, thank you for the 7 pages. She said, I'm going to put it on the table and we're just going to talk. She said, I want you to tell me what you do in a day. I want to see your bathroom and how you get on the bath bench and how that works. And at the end, she said, is there anything that you're not doing that you could do independently without taking all your time and energy? Because I work full time. So, she said, you can't be spending 2 hours putting a shirt on if you have to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly.
And she was really very realistic. And that final question was, is there anything you could do independently in a reasonable length of time that you're not doing? And we explored all of that. And that was really helpful to have somebody who's familiar with CSIL and familiar with people with disabilities. I've been on the CSIL program for a long time. I've had MS for 37 years. So I guess I've been on CSIL about 12 years. And like Paul, I don't think I couldn't survive without CSIL.
Cannot, right? And yeah,
I couldn't do what I'm doing. Now, one other question, Paul, because I read the guidelines for Vancouver Coastal Health, the suggested guidelines for CSIL, and they're changing it that you can be away for 4 weeks. In Fraser Health, I think it's still 2 weeks. Is that changing in Fraser Health as well?
Yeah, it'll be across the board.
It'll be a 4 week. And when's that going to start?
Well, we'll wait until we see the contract, of course, I should say. But in theory, the contract that you saw from Vancouver Coastal will be the same, if not just slightly different. But overall, all the contracts across the province should have a similar look and feel now.
Okay, well, I'm not going for 4 weeks. I'm going for 2.5 in the fall, but that's all right. Okay. That's all my comments. That's enough, eh?
Well, thank you. That was awesome. Appreciate it.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I can't get this too good. The woman that just came on and said her home health care worker works for a number of agencies. That's the same as mine. And even my home health care worker is concerned about what will happen to her job.
And and just to say to both of you, there's so much information still to come around this area. And these concerns are legitimate concerns, and employees should definitely be speaking out and talking to the people they need to talk to, for sure. And as people that receive support from them, the more you can support them, the better as well.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I'm glad we're talking about both sides, because
yes.
The reality is, if you're a CSIL employer or if you are someone receiving support through a home support agency, it's the caregivers the good caregivers, we want to make sure that they get what they need to survive.
I mean, when you get a good one, it's amazing. When the bad ones are terrible.
Well, and it's so great when you get a good one with you for a long time. I've had a home support worker who's been with me since she was 18. She's going to be 31 next week.
Oh, wow.
It's basically 12 and a half years.
Yeah.
I haven't got anybody who hasn't been with me less than 3 years.
When you get a good one, it's amazing.
Well, I've got 4 good ones right now.
You're lucky.
I have one who's a practical nurse, and she comes after night shift. She works night shift and comes right in the morning after night shift for a couple of hours. And she lives within walking distance, so she's a good backup when it snows.
Yeah.
And it's about how we treat them, right? As much as we want them to treat us one way, we need to do the same to them. but make sure that, again, that it's the right balance, right? And that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I make it really clear when I hire people that when you walk in that door, I expect 100%, but in exchange, I'll give you 150.
That's nice.
You know, they can phone me and say, I had one phone me and say, my daughter's getting married unexpectedly in 2 days and I'm supposed to work. I said, then you're going to the wedding. She said, what are you going to do? I said, that's not your problem. That's mine.
Mm-hmm.
Your problem is to be at that wedding.
Yeah.
I'll deal with the rest. And you have to be able to give them that kind of flexibility. Now, I don't give that flexibility at 6:45 in the morning when they're supposed to be here at 7 and they just have a hangover. Thank you, but no thank you.
Well, you know, and
there's reasonable.
that's another interesting point, though, right? Is that it's that give and take, right, that you talk about. You know, there's a time where you may want to go to bed at 2 a.m. You know, long as you're not doing that every single night, you know, most caregivers would be happy to do that, because there's times where it'd be like, do you mind going to bed a little bit earlier so that I can do XXX? And is that give and take, right?
You're gonna laugh when I say this. I have a home supporter who's been with me 12 years, and she's just really as a nanny. But if I need help Saturday night to go to bed, she goes out dancing, and she comes at the break in the band at 12:30 at night in New West. She says, I'll come when the band is at a break. So she comes for 45 minutes when the band is on a break. Which works with me. I can work at the computer till 1 in the morning, and she gets to go dancing. And yeah, you just have to flex around everybody else's needs, because everybody has a life outside my home.
Yeah.
I have someone on the phone. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but she's been wanting to ask a question for quite some time here.
Okay.
Kim, if you can go ahead, you should be okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Yep, go ahead, Kim. Kim?
Okay, yeah. Hi, Terry. Hi, Paul. It's Kim Belchek-Egger calling.
Oh, hello.
First of all, I'd really like to thank you for being alive and well and advocating for the program. I'm part of a group called South Fraser Active Living, and we have affiliations with other organizations and people from a variety of people who have disabilities. So I've got a couple of questions, if you don't mind, based on my discussions with this group over about the last 2 years. One is Michelle. Thank you, Michelle, for coming, because Michelle's been part of our group, and we've also been trying to advocate as well, Paul, for some things under. Anyway, it's not getting into specific situations. We've been trying to help clients advocate as well, and also as a group, but we're not very successful because there's only 2 or 3, and it's hard to get people to write letters. But my question is number one, and I'm kind of representing the group here. Number one, is there a minimum hours that people need to be on in order to qualify to be on the CSIL program? And number 2, is anybody in your organization doing anything about lobbying, what am I looking at? The per diem or the user fee, as you say, the client contribution. As you know, Paul, and many people listening, those who are not on disability benefits or WCB, who are working or not working, there's a lot of expenses related to having a disability. And if it's only the last couple of years of your life, it's not that the program's been designed primarily for seniors. So if it's only the last couple of years in your life, it probably isn't going to kill you or financially be as much of a hardship to pay for home support, even though it is a maximum of $3,600 a year if you're working or your spouse is working. Is there any movement about it all to look at why are people paying a user fee to go to the bathroom and to get dressed when other people You know, it's our group who has to pay to go to the bathroom for catheters, leg bags, whatever. Then we also have to pay for someone to help. And by the end of the day, how much money is left over?
So great
think,
question. Oh. Go ahead, Kim. Sorry, did you have one more first?
Because we did try to lobby for that, but it didn't get very far. Because no MLAs wanted to step up and help us.
So let me go with the latter part first, and that's the, the client contributions. When we took this on about 10 years ago, or whatever it is now, there was a number of organizations that were involved, including the Disability Alliance at the time, the Coalition of People with Disabilities, working with Christine Gordon and others, and that this was a big deal, trying to actually get some kind of cap on the client contributions, and that ultimately we wanted no client contributions, of course, and that is something that was pushed very hard for. Yet there was this compromise around the $300 cap. It is something that continues to be a concern for most people. $3,600 is still $3,600 a year. Never mind that there's people out there that aren't entitled to the cap at all, that are paying thousands of dollars a month because they got a settlement, or they didn't have a settlement structured in a way that may have been able to avoid some of the client contribution issues. I think, this is not back on the agenda again, but Kim, you bringing it forward today brings it back onto the agenda again. And we just need to start thinking through where, because we want to, I think, Kim, one of the arguments that we have is, how much does it cost to administer, the health authorities to administer to get this $300 a month, or this, and how big is this amount, and how is it really contributing, right? And us understanding those numbers would be some information that we need to gather. So, Kim, thanks for bringing that forward. In regards to the client contribution, in regards to the minimum hours, I have to say the whole eligibility component right now is really confusing for everyone, including us, at the moment. There was always an idea that you had to have a minimum of around 2 hours a day and needing services 7 days a week. That was kind of the concept originally, but the goalposts on that part has changed. And each health authority has a different threshold, because we're quite aware of some CSIL employers that are out there that are only getting 56 hours a month. And so Kim, there's no straight answer at the moment, other than to say that, be pleased to work with you and your group, by the way, on these two issues, and definitely be able to, I'd like to get your feedback on the clients that are being denied for not having enough hours, that kind of stuff, and for us to be able to look that through.
Paul, I would love it if you go for the maximum 300, which would, because right now I'm still working simply so I have something to put on line 101 and 104 of my income tax. Because when I stop work, they want to charge me more than $300 a month.
Yes.
To pay for my CSIL.
Right. And
you know how many people who have retired and have some kind of little home business or something just to have self-employment income.
Right. Exactly.
Because of the cost of CSIL.
You're really right. And, people just, in their retirement days don't want to have to be doing that, but they're kind of being forced to have something going so that, somebody who's retired. It's interesting, isn't it, that you're paying $300 max when you're working, and then when you retire, that's going to jump up to some people over $1,000 a month.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what would happen to me. And when they sent me the assessment in January, it's more than my pension.
More than your pension.
It's actually more than my monthly income.
Right, and that's
after I retired.
and that's
Makes no sense.
And then what happens with some people is that they take money out to buy medical equipment, like from their RRSP, or they take out their money from their RIF. Is it called the RIF? Anyways, I always forget the different terminologies, but
a RIF, yeah.
And then you get forced to take money from your RIF as well.
Well, that's what happened to me last year. My new power chair was $24,000, and I didn't have $24,000.
Right,
and my benefits only paid half of it. I didn't have $12,000.
Right, and if
so
you were
something to pay for it.
And if you weren't working, that would have been an additional 12,000 added to whatever monthly amount you would have been getting.
Yep.
Yep. This is definitely an area to work on. So let's keep talking about that.
Paul, is it possible for you to send me a copy of your slides to send out to the group that attended here?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Be happy.
And then at the same time, I'll pass them your email address as well, if that's all right.
That would be great. Appreciate that.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to talking to anyone. And, emailing is probably one of the better ways to communicate. And if you don't get a response from me within 48 hours, my general concept is you should probably either email me again or pop me a text or that kind of thing. So don't hesitate to do that. Unfortunately, I do get inundated with emails, but it's one of the best ways to communicate with me because I can get back to you usually pretty quick through that process.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I was just wondering why you have to have an income to get CSIL. I used to have my own company, but I haven't been working.
Okay, good.
Are you working to get the custom support option?
So Miriam, just to be clear, no, you do not need to be working to access the CSIL program. The working component is if you have income coming in from a bunch of different sources, if you are working or your spouse is working, the client contribution, the maximum they could charge is $300, right? So if you're not working, or if you're on PWD or that kind of thing, there's no monthly charge, unless you're getting other source of income, of course.
Well, I'd really like to. I miss it a great deal.
Yes.
The isolation alone, it's being able to work is good. If I can get back, I certainly plan to, but so far I haven't been able to. So.
Right.
If you don't mind, I will email you, Paul, and see if there's anything that can be done. I don't think I need very many hours, and that may be the issue. I think they're very valuable to me, but I don't think I need the, and I'm not sure going forward I will either.
Right.
But I don't.
Still happy to chat.
Sure that should be the. I think a little bit of help is gold to me. So I'm not sure that it should be based on, I still don't get all that stuff done, and it's still making a drag on my health. So I don't know what, I think it should be the health, not the time, not the amount of time, the health benefit or the lack of aggravating your health that is the key. Not so much maybe an hourly thing, although I do understand I never hired anybody for less than 3 hours, because I think by the time they get dressed, get there, even the gas these days to get to one place is dire.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's the law or just a rule. I think there's got to be a way it can be win-win for everybody. So hopefully that can be worked out. And And if not, this information has been valuable for others. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Hey, just butt in for a little bit here, Terry. Thanks a lot,
Yeah.
for inviting me. And I'm hearing the same thing over and over, Like there's not very much advocacy for these people with disabilities out there, right? And anywhere I can help. I'm finished my education now, pretty much another couple of weeks, and be working with you guys, Terry, and like to talk to you more, Paul. When we get a chance or whatever to help out with people needing help, getting through the ministries and getting through to WCBs and, all these agencies that are, because there is going to be more and more home support versus, care home services in the future, right? They're pushing for people to be taken care of in their homes versus, putting them into care homes, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And whereabouts are you located in the province?
I'm in Langley.
You're in Langley. Okay, great.
Yeah, sorry, Langley. I got a C, like a 5, incomplete, and I just went back to school. I recently injured, actually, 2015, right? So I just, instead I won't fall threes anymore, right? So I just went back to school to become a service worker, social worker, right? And with addictions, and give back a little bit to the community, It's helped me out so much, right?
Good for you, man. That is really awesome. And, and it's straight down what my alley, right? Because, it's people that can give back the best they can. And, for me, the system, I grew up in the system, as I said at the beginning, right? And for me, with the foster home, group home, I mean, I think about the millions of dollars that have gone into my care since I was 3 weeks old, right? And, it's my ability to give back. But at the same time, I think it's also an investment in people with disabilities and home support, CSIL program, equipment and devices, all of these things is about investing in people.
Yeah, well, you're hearing the same thing over and over, right? Like there's not enough prevention for the long-term health, care. Like, they have to weigh out like how much prevention goes into, your long-term health. And for something as simple as a few hours a week, for care, you might save the ministry in the long term, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, right? If you really look at it on the wider aspect of things, right? So to be able to push them into actually, and I'm more than willing to step up, and I'm pretty good at pushing,
That's great, William. And just to go with that a little further, right? Is even on the senior community, who, you've got someone who is trying to bend down to clean her floors, right? And what ends up happening is she falls and breaks a hip, and how much does that cost the system when if they could have just provided her 2 hours a day of some housekeeping?
Oh, totally. And I'm hearing more and more of it.
I mean, 2 hours a week, of course, 2 hours a week to do a bit of housekeeping,
Some way to justify it. In business, you justify, I used to work in computers, and part of is how to justify what it was going to either produce for income or save in cost. To be able to put that in a way that, helps the health authorities make the decisions that are beneficial. I always think that there's going to be those who take advantage of it. When you were talking about healthcare workers, I'm not sure it matters whether they're self-employed or whether they work for an agency. I think you're going to have some that are really good and some that aren't. Just the way it is. Rewarding and complimenting the good ones goes a long way.
Exactly, Miriam.
People like them, their ways hired and replicated versus the other way. But if I can be of any help, I would like to have taken your website down to see, and also whether there's some people who might be interested in helping because whether they've had elderly people, as you're talking about, who've had broken hips, or whether there's some volunteering that can be done.
Well, that's great, Miriam. I appreciate you saying that, and William, I also appreciate you saying that as well. And I'd be interested in following up both of you on that angle. So look forward to that.
Hey, Paul, before we sign off, because it's already 5:30, one question that I was thinking is about shared care. Do you know if there are places or sites out there that if someone's looking for in that area that they can do like a shared care program? Do you know anything?
Well, that's excellent, and thanks for asking that question. The Individualized Funding Resource Center and the Vancouver Resource Society have been teaming up on 2 properties in the North Vancouver area, both near 2nd and Lonsdale, and one at 15th and Lonsdale. And there's 5 individuals that share overnight care. And so what happens with the CSIL program is they run their own general CSIL program during the day, and at nighttime they pool themselves a couple hours at night or an hour and a half at night to be able to buy themselves an 8-hour caregiver to be able to assist with whatever care they need during the evening, during the nighttime. It's been working very, very well, and one that I think we're going to see more of coming. I know that Vancouver Resource Society has another couple units coming on board in the next few years here, and they're talking about duplicating that model. So something I think that you know, even people in their own area and stuff, right? You know, friends of people coming together and sharing some care during the day can work really well, right? You can pay somebody a little bit better, and then you share the person for, even if it's a few hours, right? If they live close enough together, right? So the shared care component can work very, very good, especially when it's led on the CSIL program side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Well, one thing that I took out of this is even just for me, I'd like to write down, collect the data, write down how long everything takes me to do. From like getting out of bed in the morning to like showering, brushing your teeth, like every single aspect of your day and the hours and time. And that could be a start to, you know, advocating for your own care, right? And seeing where people could help you.
Yeah. And Terry, just so that everybody knows too that, and if you remind me when you pop me the email that asked me for my PowerPoint, that I can also give you a copy of what we call a supported lifestyle plan, which will just be, it just shows one kind of template of what you can use. And it has a lot of different care ideas in it. Many of them won't apply to the people here, and many of it will, you know, and you can kind of pick and choose what works. But it kind of helps you kind of think through. I mean, even when you said brush your teeth, how many people forget to actually write that down as one of the tasks, right? You know, and just thinking through all those transfers, right? You know, when your caregiver, when a case manager asks, you know, how many times you transfer in a day, some, you know, people say 3 or 4, and then they go back later on that night, kind of go, oh my gosh, I actually transfer 8 times. Oh my gosh, why did I just say only 3 or 4? So writing it down today, you're right on, and I'd love to share that document. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Paul. That was just invaluable. I know.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Terry.
So about this subject, there's always so many questions, but thank you, everybody, for participating and sharing with us. So
thank you very much, Paul and Terry.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Terry and Paul.
I'll Paul's information and send it on to you. So
thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Mhm.